Welcome to the campus of North Idaho College and today's broadcast of the North Idaho College Public Forum. The crew is comprised of North Idaho College television students. Your moderator is North Idaho College political scientist Tony Stewart.
Over the past few years, a number of states and some local governments and communities in this country have gotten involved in what is called futurism studies. We've had that privilege to deal with that subject in Idaho when Governor Andrus put forth a study called Idaho Tomorrow for our citizens to participate in the process. Some years ago in Coeur d'Alene, the city in which our college is located, we started with Coeur d'Alene Tomorrow 1, and since then we have had Coeur d'Alene 2 and 3. Very recently, our neighboring city of Post Falls in Kootenai County, where our institution is located, did its first Post Falls Tomorrow program. I'm so happy to have on our program two members that participated and also assisted in the organization of what we call Post Falls Tomorrow 1. I welcome to the program, first of all, Dr. Ann Fox, who is the superintendent of the Post Falls School District, and our second guest is Linda Judd, who is an attorney in Post Falls, and she's also president of the Post Falls Chamber of Commerce. I've known both of our guests for a long time, and it's a special privilege to invite them to our program today. Dr. Fox, I will start with you, and I would like to ask you to tell our citizens that are viewing our program how this came about. How did Post Falls get involved in a process some months ago that ended very recently with the final study that you now have on the future of your city?
Tony, it was very exciting for me. I'm a newcomer to Post Falls as a new superintendent, and when I have been involved with our chamber's activities and out talking to the community, I noticed a real need for an opportunity for the community to come together, for there to be a time of planning, for developing and finding out what people feel and want for the future of our community. So with a number of very exciting people in the community, we got an idea that we should form a committee for the chamber called a Community Events Planning Committee. And with the help of the local newspaper in Post Falls, the editor Tom Burnett, two ministers, Bob Cunningham and Bill Barlow, and a very exciting parent by name of Sue Barrett, we put together a committee and said, how can we start communicating with all the people that live here? And how can we start planning the future and pull together the things that our community might want and take a look at their hopes and dreams? So we said, well, there's one person that maybe could do it for us, and that's Tony Stewart at NIC, because Coeur d'Alene had, over the past years, experienced the planning the future of Coeur d'Alene. So we took that idea, and I had a chance to be with you, Tony, a number of years ago in planning the future of Coeur d'Alene. It was a beginning for me to meet many people in the community and feel that I had a chance to be part of the community. So we took that idea, called you up, and with that got the okay from the chamber and decided to have a time where we would plan the future of Post Falls, and we instituted the program called Post Falls Tomorrow in the year 2010, and that's how we got started.
I would also inform our viewers that would not be familiar with this that the study as it's been completed was in two parts. First of all, we did telephone a random segment of the community. In fact, we covered all portions of the community with a telephone survey of 180 people. And then, following the results of that, we had a conference which took place one afternoon and one evening, many hours actually, from 4 to 10, in which people came and were selected for, or they volunteered for various groups. There were 9 major areas in which we studied all evening, and out of that conference came a long list of recommendations, about 10 pages single-spaced, for your future. At this time, I would like to invite both you, Dr. Fox, and Linda Judd to share with our viewers some of the results of that conference and where you may be headed in the future according to the opinion of your leaders and your community's citizens. Also, this might be helpful to our citizens and other communities to know how one community deals with their future. If you will bear with me, I will invite both of you to respond to some questions concerning the telephone survey, and I would just inform the viewers that it was very representative in that we had 91 men and 89 women in the survey, and that was very important, and it's certainly representative of the occupation and age and education of the people in that community. With that brief background of the demographic data, let's look at just some samples that were on the questionnaire. Time will not permit looking at all of them. Linda, I will start with you, if I may. One of the questions that we asked the citizens of Post Falls, since you are a growing community and you've been called oftentimes a bedroom community, and we think oftentimes of people moving through for a short period of time in your community, and it creates the problem of permanency and a networking system. In fact, we found in the study that that was a theme that went through the study, is we want our identity, we want to have more permanency, we want to have a network, we want to have committees. And so when we asked the question, how long do you plan to stay in Post Falls area, the results are most interesting. 42.8% said at least over 10 years. Another 37% who were elderly says, I'm going to spend the rest of my life here. So the overwhelming majority of people are not leaving. How would you react to that result, and what does that mean?
Well, I think for the city of Post Falls, it means that cognizance needs to be taken of the fact that the people are looking at more permanent kinds of institutions, which I think is a good sign for our community. I think there's a lot of material that's been gleaned from this survey that will allow the leadership in the community to try to make some plans along those lines. Transportation, development plans, parks, retail planning, a lot of various subject matters can be dealt with in a more particularized fashion, I think, as a result of the survey and the intent expressed by the individuals responding to the survey that, yes, we do want to remain in the Post Falls area for a significant period of time, 10 years or more.
Mm-hmm. Another question that has a relationship to that I'd like to get you to respond to. The citizens were also asked how much they wanted to grow, I believe, in the school district area, and provide us information. About 13,500 people live there. So we asked, do you want to remain with that population by the year 2010? And we should inform our viewers, we were looking down the road for 25 years. Or do you want to grow to 25,000 or 40,000 or no limit? And our studies show that over 76% want to be no larger than 25,000. What do you read into that conclusion?
Well, as I read that, and I'm sure it could be read in many different ways, but it seems to me that the people are interested in some growth. They want it planned. They want to see a good quality environment along with the growth that takes place. They seem to be interested in amenities, facilities that might be available to the people, the population as a whole, and how that's constructed in the location that that's constructed. One of the responses had to do with a municipal sports center, and the overwhelming majority responding to that particular question as to whether or not they were interested in such a center said, yes, we are, and we want to see it centrally located. That particular response in regard to the population growth seems to be a balanced one. Yes, we want to see some growth, but we want it to be planned and well planned. We want good guidelines. We want those guidelines set in a way that are easily understandable by the layman as well as the technicians and the experts. And we want to be a part of the community and have some input into that.
We're very interested in the viewers who are in Post Falls or listening to the program. And there's another question that relates to growth and has to do with annexing. We asked the citizens if they support annexation. Would you take that question and inform the citizens what the results were and how you would interpret those concerning annexing unincorporated areas to the city?
Well, the question was, should the city of Post Falls attempt to annex outlying unincorporated areas to ensure more orderly development of the city? And the response was 51.7% said, yes, we do want to see annexation. There was 28.9% responding no, and 19.4% responding undecided. But with the undecided element, along with the more than 50% responding favorably to the annexation, it seems to indicate an interest in the city looking at the expanding boundaries and annexing appropriate sections into the city. I think there's a concern about the tax base, and there's a concern about the services that the city might render to outlying areas, and trying to incorporate that into a well-planned growing community that has with the city having some control over the development, the services that are extended, and also receiving the tax benefits from the annexation.
Dr. Fox, since you're such a participant type, and so is, of course, Linda, but you're always organizing to help people become involved in determining their future. We put a question on there that should interest you. What did the citizens say about participating in their community in the future? Were the results promising? Do they want to be part of the decision making?
Tony, they were very promising, and I was hoping it would come out like this, but to be honest with you, I really didn't think so. We asked them if the opportunity were available for more citizens to participate in the city, would you serve? Well, interestingly enough, about 40% of the people said they would serve. And there was another group, 36% said no, and undecided was 23%. Well, that tells me that already we've got a large percent of the population who's willing to contribute. There's another whole group, if they were asked, or I think if the doors were open where they thought they could participate, they would. And I think as our society grows, oftentimes people think they can't serve. They don't have the skills to do it. They don't even know how to get involved in the process. But if in Post Falls we open up the doors, we show people that we respect them at any walk in life that they are, that they do have human dignity, that they can offer their ideas, I think we can give people an opportunity to serve. And it was just fantastic to see that kind of response. Not only did they say that they'd be willing to do it, but they gave their name over the telephone. And we have 2 pages of people's names that the Chamber already has who will be used in the community. And hopefully we can call on those people to serve.
So you're going to go right ahead and contact those people
You bet we are.
Put them to work.
Right.
Very good. Linda, you were very involved with the planning and future of Post Falls. And one of the questions dealt with what kind of commercial development do you need? And what do you see from this study about where you may be headed in commercial development?
Well, the question was, is there a need for more retail commercial development in Post Falls? And the response to that was an overwhelming 81.7% said yes, 13.3% said no, and there was 5% undecided. That response, along with the conference survey, seems to indicate that the people are in the community are very interested in development of department stores, clothing stores, that sort of thing, and it ties in with some of the responses that we did receive in the population committee, and that we did receive in the question referring to annexation and the desire to annex or not to annex. The people are seeming to express an opinion that we should be a permanent community with an identity. They would like to be shopping in the local area. They would like to have the department store availability. They would like to have the clothing store availability right at hand in the Post Falls area. That would indicate, to me at least, that developers coming into the Post Falls area could take cognizance of the survey, could understand what the people think they need, which is an important criteria, I think, for developers and determining what would be successful in the community, and would be important also for the city in evaluating their plans in upgrading some of, or renewing or amending some of their ordinances and making it easier for these kinds of developments to take place. So it seems to me a very positive attitude that's being expressed there.
And I know that even as an administrator in education, as superintendent, not only do you worry about curriculum, but you worry about transportation of your children to the primary schools and also the students to the high school. And along with that, you got involved in some transportation issues, and I got so excited when you indicated that there's some decisions about to be made and some of the data here are being used. There are 3 basic questions on the survey that deal with your traffic lights and interstate interchange, and I believe that you told me that some people were saying, well, they don't want this or that, but you found out and that you've already put this to use. Would you tell us what they are saying that they want in relation to transportation and how you're using this already?
Well, there were some major questions we asked them. We found out that, number one, people really want an interchange at Spokane Street, and that would greatly help our whole development of Post Falls. As we look on a map, we need a central area for Post Falls where people say this is downtown. The interchange would help determine that. The Chamber of Commerce is looking at an office near that area, and overwhelmingly the people said we want the interchange. Well, ironically, one of our chamber members who had been through this report and had just heard about it was in Boise, and some legislators said, we heard the people in Post Falls don't support an interchange. And he said, wait, we've got a study, and hurried up and called up, and we sent the study off, and to show for proof that the people in Post Falls do want an interchange. They want it.
About almost 30 percentage
yes.
point margin.
People were very supportive for a bridge at Green Ferry. They want that. And the other key thing, they want Celtice Way improved, particularly in the area of stoplights and resurfacing. So those were some key things. There's a lot of small things in transportation. One thing that will probably come out later in our talk, but kind of exciting to tell you about, is a monorail. They were talking about getting a monorail to Post Falls, and we would be a hub of shopping.
Yes, and when you're looking down the road 25 years, things will change, and I thought the citizens of Post Falls were very good at looking down the road and saying, hey, we don't limit ourselves to just now. Another question in education that was asked concerned, as you're growing so rapidly, are you going to concentrate more and more students in one high school facility and also a junior high, or are you going to separate it into different units? There was mixed results there, so what are you going to do in that area as you look at this down the road?
Well, this is a tough one. When we sampled the population, we asked them to consider whether, suppose we had to build either a new high school or a new junior high, what would you favor, one high school with 2,000 students or two high schools with 1,000 students each? Well, ironically, it was almost 50-50. Half of the population said, we'll take a larger high school, and the other half said, we'll take two high schools. Well, then we went back and took a look at the data, and believe it or not, the men favored one high school, and the women favored two. I'm not sure exactly why. We could hypothesize. It could be the women are more empathetic, realizing that people need more attention, that smaller schools will allow that. Could be the men are more economical, and they might say it might be cheaper to run to a large school. Or maybe for the athletics, they want us to have more padding because, as you've probably heard, we're A1 now, so they want us to compete better. So that's just hypothesizing. But I thought it was real interesting, the difference between the men and the women.
It's important to know in your decision making.
And it is. And it will help us when we talk to the community why there's a difference in their attitudes.
Believe it or not, we only have 10 minutes left, and we have a lot of things we want to cover, but there's a question here for both of you. Linda, I'll start with you concerning a really interesting question, asking the citizens by the year 2010, as we go down that road, what's going to be the greatest problems that face you? And as I read the results, of course, by far the most concern was for economy and jobs with 35.6%, but next, behind it was a great concern about what might happen to education and its funding and its quality. And then when we combine crime and drug abuse, this was also over 20%. How do you read what the people are saying about the problems that will be the greatest in the future?
Well, we seem to come back to the idea that the people see their community as a permanent residence for themselves and their children growing up, and that it's going to be important in order to continue to permanently reside in the Post Falls area, that there be jobs and that the economy be sufficient to allow that jobs to happen, employment to happen. They seem to be very concerned about that and seem to want to take part in an effort to solve that problem. I notice in other responses to the survey there's discussion about maybe activity to promote certain kinds of industry in the Post Falls area, non-pollutant kinds of industry. Again, showing the concern with the economy and the job picture in the Post Falls area. Of course, the crime response indicates, I think, a general overall social concern with the quality of life, with the safety and police protection in the city, which again is going to depend a great deal on employment and the tax base and the monies available to the city to protect the population. Education, that's been a continuing problem for Post Falls. We've had over a long period of time a split shifting problem that comes and goes. At times we're able to avoid that, but it seems to be with us periodically. That has to do, of course, with our growth. Also then, of course, with split shifting, you have the concern with the structures and the, just the educational facilities that are needed. So the people don't like to see this happening. They would like to see some stability and like to get away from some of those problems. That's the way I would interpret it.
I noticed when I gave those results that Ann was very interested in, and education was listed as something to look at. And I believe you'd like to respond to your interpretation.
I was pleased with their choices because I think they've targeted it well. If we don't have good economy, we don't have the jobs, then we can't pay for the education, we can't support what we need to do to make it a good community for the young and for its future. One of the exciting things that the Chamber has done this past year is made a major effort to look at the whole area of jobs and economy, and the Chamber tried to open up an office, got out brochures to go after business to come in and help our economy. And in the area of education, we do have a problem. We're growing because we are close to other areas and centers, and we need industry to help support the tax base.
We're going to have to move on with the little time we have left. We should have done 2 programs, one on each. But as I've told our viewers, in following this survey, we met with the leaders, and we had a very good turnout on a very bad winter night. And the citizens, for all those hours, broke up into 9 groups and studied and discussed and then made recommendations. As I indicated earlier in the program, some of the subjects that were talked about were population growth policies by one group. Another group discussed economic growth. A third group dealt with agricultural and urban policies as the urban area reaches out to the agricultural area. There was education policies in one group. One was entitled Social Problems. Another was medical services. A 7th one was Parks and Recreation. And then we had transportation and finally municipal services. And time will not permit us to go through all these, but I would like to start with you, Linda, and ask your reaction now that you've read and evaluated some of those proposals. Could you pull out for our viewers, particularly those in Post Falls, what you believe to be some of the areas of, and the recommendations that will be significant as you move forward towards 2010?
Well, I think the survey as a whole is significant. It's difficult to pick out particular items that might be more significant, but there are very interesting items. For example, in the conference, the Population Growth Policies Committee came up with a fairly optimistic growth suggestion of approximately 40,000 population for the year 2010. That committee's response taken in light of the telephone survey would probably be dampened somewhat by the telephone survey, but just looking at that possibility, we're really seeing a need on the part of the Post Falls community to analyze our water and sewer facilities, our transportation facilities, our commercial area for the city, to see how these factors can be upgraded to serve a community much larger than what we presently have at 13,500, and done in such a way that we don't spoil the quality of life within the community.
There was a real emphasis in that area, wasn't there? As you are going to grow and they're going to try to decide which way, there was a lot of emphasis on tourism and light industry, wasn't there?
There was. There's a lot of emphasis on that. The people indicating that they would like to see light industry in the area, again coordinating this I think with the concept that they would like to see greater employment opportunities. Further, that they would like to see a greater emphasis toward promoting tourism, seeming to indicate an interest in the short-term effects, maybe not having to have quite so much expensive facilities and amenities available if you are promoting the tourism prospect rather than other more permanent kinds of usages of the community facilities. That, of course, has to be taken in light of the Agricultural Committee's statements. That committee at the conference was a little uncertain about the goals and the objectives that they wanted to achieve in the year 2010, but there were a couple of very good suggestions that came out of that committee, saying, first of all, we don't want to see our community become a dust ground surrounding the city, due to the fact I would imagine that the agricultural fields would not continue in a lucrative way. They couldn't continue to farm them in a very lucrative way, and so they might deteriorate into dust fields. Or secondly, we don't want to see concrete and asphalt surrounding our city. We want to have the kind of community that will continue to attract people, just as it attracted us and our parents and our grandparents before us, to want to come to live here. And so that means that we have to balance the agricultural interests with the tourism and the commercial interests and the city's interests. And
a delicate balance.
A delicate balance it is, right, because that does require, as is pointed out by the committee, the agricultural committee, that requires fertilizing, that requires chemicals being applied to the ground, that requires burning, and there has to be an understanding amongst the various sections of the community that these things are necessary in order for the fields to be productive and to be to pay a profit to the farmers, which they've got to have in order to continue their business.
And you have also been digesting all these pages, and if you could pull out a couple of things in about 3 minutes, what would you share with us?
There seems to be, according to the participants, a real desire to organize logically the whole Post Falls area in a number of areas. One, in transportation, to allow sections that aren't connected to be connected. In the area of parks, to have neighborhood parks, and a real emphasis in developing park locations. In the area of social care and well-being, there were ideas of developing centers for people who needed care who couldn't afford it. They wanted things like the Ministerial Association to set up a food kitchen. I saw a real interest in a lot of the different areas we studied to make things better for the people that live there, such as sidewalks in neighborhoods, making streets nice so there's stoplights so that children can walk on a sidewalk to school. From everything in the school district, that the school district is the center for activities, that the gyms are used, that there would be more indoor buildings built for winter activities so that people in the community could have a center place to go. We saw an interest in certain recreational things, a roller skating rink, a movie theater, and last, probably most important of getting industry to come is the whole concept of shopping. They'd like a large shopping center either right in the downtown or outside on the prairie with a monorail to bring people to Post Falls.
That's a good note on which to stop. I wish we had more time. We're out of time. I want to thank both of you on behalf of our staff. I want to first of all congratulate both of you and other members of your committee that have done so much work, and I just am so excited about your future. And I would like to say to you and to the other people of Post Falls, after this study, I'm very excited. I think you have a great imagination and determination. I think great things will happen to you. You have done the work, you've got the information, and I wish you the best. And I believe that you will move from the bedroom community concept to a networking system and an identity that's going to produce a great quality life. And congratulations to you. Ladies and gentlemen, our guests have been Dr. Ann Fox, who's the superintendent of schools of Post Falls, and Linda Judd, who's an attorney and president of the Chamber of Commerce. We've been talking about a recent study conducted called Post Falls Tomorrow and looking at their future. I sure hope you've enjoyed our program and this has given you some ideas for the future. I would like to invite you to be with us again next week at the same time. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum can be seen at this same time each week over this station. This production was videotaped earlier by a North Idaho College student crew for viewing at this more appropriate time.